ever thought about, stepping into that world of academia?
Hmm.
Like maybe sharing your knowledge,
Yeah,
becoming an adjunct professor? It's something that seems to be on a lot of people's minds these days.
it is.
We're taking a deep dive into it today
Okay.
using this article from academicjobs.com. And get this, it's written by the CEO himself.
Oh, wow.
So we're getting some, real insider perspectives here. We're going to uncover some surprising things. It's not just about lectures and grading, folks.
Yeah, you'd be surprised really how much more there is to it. Like the role of an adjunct professor, it's really evolving. And it's become pretty central to how a lot of colleges operate these days.
Okay, so let's start with the basics then. The article kind of lays out those typical responsibilities: teaching, grading, lesson planning,
Mhm.
all the good stuff. But it emphasizes that this isn't always a full-time gig.
Right.
What are the implications of that?
That's a really crucial point. We're seeing this growing trend, of
Yeah.
colleges relying more and more on adjunct
Oh,
professors.
interesting.
And it raises all these questions about how higher education is changing. Like, why are institutions choosing this model? What does it mean for the quality of the teaching? What about the overall academic experience for students? These are things we really need to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's the money question,
Right.
the compensation, and it seems to be all over the place. This article mentions hourly rates that range from $34 to $200.
Wow.
What factors contribute to such a wide range?
Well, it's not as straightforward, as a typical salary structure. Of course, the degree you hold, how prestigious the institution is, those play a role. But there's more to it than that.
Okay.
A lot of adjuncts are actually paid per course or even per credit hour. So it's less about like clocking in and out.
Right,
And it's more about the commitment to a specific course. It's a different way of looking at work.
It's fascinating how that differs from that traditional academic model, right?
Yeah.
But beyond the classroom stuff, the article mentions some perks that, might not be so obvious. It calls them educational opportunities.
Yeah.
What's that all about? Is being an adjunct a learning experience too?
Oh, absolutely. It can be. One of the benefits that people often overlook is the environment. It's immersive, it's academic. You have access to all these conferences, lectures from leading scholars, and you have chances to network with tenured faculty.
Oh, wow.
It's an environment that just constantly stimulates you intellectually, which can be, a huge draw for someone who wants to stay on top of their field.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's not just about, giving out the knowledge, but also being a part of that intellectually vibrant community.
Exactly.
But for anyone who's seriously considering taking this path, the article outlines a 5-step process to becoming an adjunct professor.
Okay.
And it's not, a snap your fingers decision. There's prep work.
Oh, yeah,
There's stuff involved.
for sure.
What's that look like?
Well, it's definitely a journey. You need that solid foundation, of course, a bachelor's degree, a specific area of study that you're really focused on, and then you gotta dive deep into grad school.
Oh, okay.
But that's just the beginning.
Yeah.
Crafting a really compelling teaching statement is crucial. It's not just like a list of everything you've taught. It's more than that.
Yeah.
It's got to showcase your philosophy of education, your approach.
So it's about demonstrating passion and a really clear vision, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Now, when it comes to picking a master's program, what advice would you give someone who is specifically aiming for an adjunct position?
I would say look for programs that not only deepen your expertise, right?
Yeah.
But also give you that practical teaching experience,
Mm-hmm.
like teaching assistantships, maybe chances to lead workshops, things like that.
Yeah.
Those hands-on experiences they're so valuable when you're applying for adjunct positions because it shows you've already got some experience, under your belt.
Yeah. Yeah, that's practical advice. Something aspiring adjuncts can really use. Let's kind of shift gears now and talk about the day-to-day reality of being an adjunct, right?
Okay.
The article highlights the flexibility, like choosing your own hours and locations, which, let's be honest, sounds appealing.
It does.
But is it the ultimate side hustle, or can it turn into this demanding multi-campus balancing act?
Well, flexibility is definitely a huge advantage. But there is a flip side.
Okay.
Finding open positions, navigating the whole adjunct pool, managing your workload across different institutions. It takes organization, it takes hustle.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have the core work itself, right? Prepping for classes, grading, connecting with your students. It's a juggling act for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely takes a certain kind of person,
Yeah.
somebody who can really manage their time and adapt to all these different settings. And speaking of showcasing your abilities, this article, it goes into the application process too, emphasizing that strong teaching statement like
Hmm.
we talked about.
Right.
But it also mentions something called a diversity statement.
Yeah, that caught my eye as well. It seems like these days colleges are really focused on diversity and inclusion, and they want to see that reflected in their faculty. What exactly should go into a diversity statement?
It's a chance for you to, highlight your commitment to creating an inclusive learning environment for everyone, reflecting on your own experiences, your perspectives, how you've interacted with diverse communities. It's not just checking boxes. It's about showing you understand and appreciate the value that different backgrounds and viewpoints bring.
So it's more about showing that you're not just, an expert in your subject, but also someone who's really attuned to the needs of a diverse student body.
Exactly.
And then there's the CV, the academic equivalent of a resume.
Yeah, think of it as a resume, but supercharged. It goes way beyond just listing your work history. It includes your education, your research, any publications, presentations you've done. It's like this whole record of your academic journey, all your accomplishments.
It sounds like there's a lot involved in presenting yourself as a qualified candidate for an adjunct position.
It is.
We talked earlier about the adjunct pool, and it sounds like it might involve a bit of a waiting game. Can you kind of break down how that system works?
Yeah, sometimes it can feel that way. Imagine this pool of talented individuals, right?
Yeah.
All competing for a limited number of opportunities.
Boy.
The hiring committee, they add your profile to this pool. And then when a course opens up, one that matches what you're qualified for, then they might reach out to you.
Okay.
It doesn't always guarantee you'll get work immediately, but it does keep you on their radar.
So it requires, being proactive,
Mm,
keeping your profile up to date, networking, making sure the right people see you. It's a hustle, but if teaching is your passion, it might be worth it. But it makes me wonder about the social aspect of being an adjunct. We've talked about teaching, the research, those educational opportunities and all. But is there a sense of community among adjunct professors? Does this article touch on that?
that's a really interesting point, and it's actually something that the article doesn't really address directly. We tend to get so caught up in all the logistics, the nuts and bolts of the role, that we kind of forget about the human side of things.
Exactly. Do adjuncts feel welcome, as part of the faculty? Are there chances to collaborate, connect with others?
It really varies from one institution to the next. Some places, they have this really strong culture of inclusivity. They value their adjuncts. They're seen as members of the academic community. They're invited to faculty meetings, social events, even research collaborations.
Mhm.
But in other settings, it can be much more isolating.
So it's really key to do your research on a specific institution's culture, right?
Yeah,
It's not just about the job, but the whole environment you're going to be working in.
exactly.
We've covered a lot of ground here, like what an adjunct professor is, the salary situation, the perks, how to even become one. It's a unique path for sure, with its own rewards and challenges.
It really is.
Okay.
And as with any career, weighing those pros and cons is super important. The flexibility is great, but the potential lack of stability, always having to hustle for positions, those are definitely things to consider.
It boils down to finding what works for you, your goals, your lifestyle.
Yeah.
Now, with all this in mind, is adjunct life the right fit for our listeners out there?
That's the question everyone needs to ask themselves. What
Uh,
really stood out? The flexibility, the intellectual stimulation, that chance to shape young minds. And what are their concerns? The potential instability, maybe the workload, the competition for
It's
positions.
important to remember there's no one-size-fits-all here. What works for one person might not work for another.
Right.
Self-reflection, doing your research, those are key.
Absolutely. Talking to people who are already adjuncts, getting their firsthand perspective, that can be really valuable in making a decision.
And for those who are ready to jump in, start looking at open adjunct positions. Remember academicjobs.com. It's a fantastic resource. They list opportunities both locally and globally. Definitely worth checking out.
Oh, yeah. It's a great starting point for anyone seriously considering this. They have tons of info and resources specifically for the world of adjunct professorship.
Awesome. So we've given our listeners plenty to think about today. We dug into all the ins and outs of adjunct life, from the classroom to applying and everything in between.
Yeah, the practicalities, the perks, the potential pitfalls. In the end, the decision is up to each individual. Does this path align with what they want to do, what they're aiming for?
That's the big question.
Yeah.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, remember knowledge is power. The more you know, the better choices you can make.
Well said. And with that, we'll leave you with this final thought. The world of academia, it's dynamic, always changing. Whether you choose to become an adjunct professor or just stay curious about higher education, lifelong learning, that's a journey worth taking.
It's really about like finding that place where your passion and skills, they line up with how things actually work in academia.
Exactly.
And sometimes that means checking out different options before you find that perfect fit.
Absolutely. Like, it's not failing if you realize a full-time academic career isn't for you,
Right.
or that being an adjunct has these unique advantages that fit some people better.
And speaking of advantages, we keep coming back to that flexibility that adjunct work offers. But I'm curious, is there a downside to all that flexibility? Does it ever create problems for adjuncts who are, trying to build a solid career?
That's a really important question, because while that freedom to choose your courses and hours is great, it can come with a downside. Often there's less job security, fewer benefits compared to traditional full-time faculty. So it's a trade-off. You got to think about it carefully.
It's like navigating a whole different career landscape. You're always adapting, always hustling to find those teaching opportunities.
Yeah,
I imagine that takes a certain kind of resilience and entrepreneurial spirit almost.
it does. And aspiring adjuncts need to be ready for that. Building your network, showcasing what you're good at, always looking for those new opportunities, it becomes part of the job. It's not for everyone.
It sounds like a constant balancing act, juggling teaching, research, and applying for new positions. But for people who like fast-paced environments, who value that flexibility, it might be a good challenge.
Exactly. That's why it's so important to really dig into what this career path is about before jumping in. You got to understand the potential drawbacks alongside those exciting parts like flexibility and being intellectually engaged. Then you can make a good decision.
We've definitely highlighted all those things today, right? From applying to the bigger trends that are shaping the world of adjuncts, it's clear that this role is more than meets the eye.
It really is. It's so multifaceted. It's changed a lot over time, and it's still shaping higher education. Whether you see it as an opportunity or a challenge, it's a big deal in the academic world.
And for those listeners who are ready to explore those opportunities, don't forget about academicjobs.com. It's a great place to find adjunct positions, local and global, connecting people with the institutions that are looking for their expertise.
It's a really helpful tool, for navigating that world of academic job searching. It makes things easier, gives adjuncts a place to show what they can do and connect with potential employers.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I encourage all our listeners to keep exploring the ever-changing world of academia. Whether you're thinking about becoming an adjunct professor, going for more education, or just staying curious about learning, remember this: learning is a lifelong journey.
Well said. And with that, we'll leave you with this last thought. The most fulfilling careers are often those that match up with our passions, our values, and our unique talents. So keep exploring, keep learning, and keep striving to make a real difference in the world, no matter what path you choose.
A perfect way to end. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of adjunct professors. Until next time, keep those minds active and keep exploring.